Hi guys, today I'm going to be reviewing the Chinese film Dead to Rights. In this bleak and troubling times, Dead to Rights is a reminder for us to learn from history and prevent repeating human catastrophe that have gone before. The film is set during the Sino-Japanese War, and a group of Chinese people seek refuge, hiding in this photography shop to prevent being massacred by the Japanese occupation. Now, this film has been a huge box office hit in China, and it has been selected as China's official submission for the 98th Academy Award for Best International Feature Film. In this video, I'm going to give you a brief overview of the film and then point out 5 talking points of the film, as well as look at how well it could do in the Oscar race. So let's roll and review that film. If you're new to my channel, my name is Paul, and I review the best of world cinema, and I follow the race for the Best International Feature Film, from countries selecting their submission to the final winner. This film retells the brutal occupation of Nanjing by the Japanese, and this historical recreation feels like such an important story to tell through a blockbuster format. Ito is a Japanese photographer who is desperate to progress his career, and he leans on the Chinese civilian, Chang, who develops the skills to process photography. In Ito's photography, he tries to capture some propaganda showing a glorious relationship between Chinese and Japanese populations in Nanjing. But then he also captures the brutality of the occupation, showing severed heads and the death of individuals and soldiers. As Chang develops the photography, he noticed there is this family hiding in the cellar and darkroom of this photography shop. And they are in the process of deciding, how do you escape from this brutal regime? But the key to the film is, how can you escape this regime? Are you contributing to it? Are you a collaborator in terms of evilness and death? So here are 5 talking points about the film Dead to Rights. Number 1 is the teaching of Chinese history. Now, Dead to Rights operates under a blockbuster style format. It's very simplistic in terms of its storytelling, and it also includes pleasing scenes such as war and brutality that you often get in big blockbusters. However, there is a lot of substance in this format as well, and there's loads of parallels between what was happening in Europe under the Nazi regime. And even if you look at some of the very modern conflicts in Gaza and Ukraine, there's elements of the story being repeated again and again, which really shows how humans are not learning from the mistakes from the past. And this film, using this blockbuster format, really puts to the fore of what's happened in the past and how you could utilize that in solving today's problem. Number 2 is the depth in the narrative. Despite using a very populist and accessible narrative structure that you find in blockbusters, the film actually also goes under the surface and asks questions such as, what is your role if you're going to collaborate with the Japanese in this point of time? Are you guilty as well? What are actions if you intend them to be good, but they actually result in the death of Chinese people? There's all these sort of questions of war where it's morally complex and there's not easy answers. And the film is not scared to explore them, even if it is only at the surface level. It also explores how there's a difference between the outcomes of short-term actions as well as the comparison with longer-term actions. So you may have negative consequences in the short term, but if it can help expose the abuse of human rights in the longer term, that is a very good thing. It also shows Japanese people as multidimensional. It doesn't just put them as soulless, faceless, evil people. Each has got a personality and has flaws and has positive aspects, despite his contribution to the oppression of the people of Nanjing. There's also really clever elements where they draw the comparison between good propaganda and bad propaganda. So they take this thing of photos of individuals having their day-to-day living, smiling, shooting portraits or whatever it might be, and then they take a photo of that individual suffering, being murdered, being put to death, and all those horrific things. And the contrast reminds us of the role of propaganda. Good propaganda in terms of showing these positive relationships between China and Japan, and that propaganda to create morale, and the enemy in terms of showing death. It asks all these questions while maintaining very basic, accessible blockbuster-style narrative structure. While it does feed the audience to an extent in terms of what is happening on the screen, it also provides space for the audience to think about those questions. And I imagine some of the audience aren't necessarily used to seeing films where they have to really think, because that's the state of mainstream cinema. Number three, it really does look like a blockbuster. There's a really impressive use of scenery where it recreates the world of Nanjing in the time period of this war. And there's huge amounts of battles, especially in the first 15 minutes or so, which are really done like that big blockbuster that they're powering into the enemy and there's blood everywhere. It really does not avert away from the suffering of the occupation. And there's one particular scene that I'm not going to spoil, but if you've seen the film, it's the dropping point that is so disturbing. And I think this film really earns its UK 18 age limit certificate because it is so bloody, and that bloody isn't mindless. It's done with hate and it's done through this occupation. Number four is it's not subtle. Again, it uses this blockbuster template, which means it often tries to manipulate the audience in terms of how you're feeling through loud, over the top music, through maybe over the top acting at points, although a lot of the acting is extremely good. But it's trying to capture the maximum audience, and to do this, it can't be subtle. It can't have too much space for the audience to think because it wants to be seen by as many people as possible. And number five is the use of over sentimental values in this. Again, there's big over the top acting, there's big emotional music. It really does not dial it down. And it also incorporates an element of nationalism, being proud of the motherland. And I think this probably relates to it being Chinese and the Chinese government wanting to sign it off and submit it for the Oscars. So, of course, it's going to play on that nationalism. But of course, the characters who are Chinese, because of the suffering they're going through, they are also really proud of their nation and they're distraught the fact it's being occupied by the Japanese. But I think there's perhaps a role in which the director could have toned some of that down, but still make those really important points. So overall, I think this is a really solid film. I think it's got some flaws, and I think the blockbuster element is not to my taste, and that's because I'm not a big fan the big action-packed blockbuster or the over-the-top romantic situations. I like something a bit more subtle, and I don't think it's trying to do that. So therefore, despite its many positives, I'm going to give Dead to Rights 3 stars. Despite the strong history of Chinese cinema, China as a country has not done well in the Oscar race, and they're currently ranked 40th overall across all the countries in this category. And this is because they've only ever had 2 nominations, Judo and Hero, which was in 2002, an exceptional martial arts film. However, the country have not even made the shortlist since then. So that's 23 years, which is why they have such a low ranking. And I think the reason for this is that in recent years, the country have put forward films that are very nationalistic and sometimes big Chinese blockbusters, rather than more Cannes-friendly films or art house films, or the sort of films that get put forward in the Oscar race. And I think there's been a couple of times where they could have submitted stronger films and have a chance to at least make that shortlist. However, I actually think Dead to Rights is actually an exceptionally good choice for a Chinese submission. I don't think it's going to win the award, but I think it's got a great chance to get their first shortlisting for 23 years. It's accessible. It has relevant points from history that apply today. And I think there is something about its success that manages to have artistic credit as well as being a big blockbuster that could make it a potential outsider to make that final 15 shortlist. So have you seen Dead to Rights? If you have, put down in the comments below, what did you think? And do you think it could be China's first Oscar nomination for 23 years? If you like this video and want to see more news and reviews for the Best International Feature Film Academy Award category, please do subscribe to Global Film Pool. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope to see you again soon.